We're going to talk.
All right.
We have
About a very large bang.
a very large bang. Very large. I knew about this place. Mm-hmm. I knew kind of the stories behind it.
Yeah.
But until I researched it, I didn't realize just how big the accident was and how much bigger it could have been.
Yes, and the size of the scope of the disaster that could have very well had a lot more damaging effects on local cities.
Yeah. Let's put it this way.
How big this bang was.
Let's put it this way. If the winds had not changed, Syracuse would not be on the map anymore. Seriously. Mm-hmm. And we got Honey over here, so if you hear anything weird, we got Honey and Lloyd sleeping. So our producers are busy with us. So without further ado, I think we need to talk about the Solvay process explosion. Welcome down Earthly Upstate. I'm Mari.
I'm Matthew.
And today we're talking about the Solvay process explosion.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the worst, I will say, wartime disasters that happened. This happened during World War I.
Mm-hmm. Yes, July 2nd, 1918.
Mm-hmm. The remnants of this explosion you can still see. You can go explore if you like, and if you don't want to go yourself, there's plenty of videos on YouTube where people have done it for you, and they're creepy as hell, without even getting into the paranormal part of it. Yeah. And yes, this place is another place where I'll say if it's not haunted, it should be. Mm-hmm. The amount of death that happened there, the amount of, it's just a horrific event, and I'm really shocked.
How many people? It's
not as haunted. At least 50 people died.
Yeah. A lot of people were instantaneously affected by it.
Yes. Ghost hunters have gone there.
Mm-hmm.
They've recorded an EVP. People have sighted ghosts in this area. And it's a ruin. So if you want a haunted place to explore, this is it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go during nighttime, though. Not so much for the ghosts. I would be more worried about...
Footing?
I'd be more worried about other people I may run into there.
Yeah, you are close to the cities.
You are close to the cities, and it's a very wild area. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't run into people, it's a good chance you might run into like feral dogs and things of that nature. So
have
go
there
in the
been
daytime.
Some reports of feral dogs, feral dog attacks?
No, but the area is known to have reputation having no felines.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an urban legend in the area that there are no cats allowed in this town.
Oh, there you go, folks.
So
right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's not related at all to the explosion. It's just one of these weird urban legends of the area.
It's that explosion that created this environment that's now a place for these things.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you could still, the scars are still there. So let's go back to July 2nd. 1918 in Solvay, New York, which is just outside of Syracuse. Now, I did bring up a map to kind of get an idea where this is located.
Yeah, so with the Solvay Process Company.
It's not even 4 miles from downtown Syracuse, not even 2 miles away from where the State Fair is. And the State Fair was located in that area at the time, but during World War I, they weren't using it as a State Fair. It was being used as a training ground.
Training ground, yeah.
So I want you to imagine, you're not that far from downtown Syracuse, and you're not that far from a major training ground at this point. Keep this in mind as we're talking about it, and this is in World War I. Mm-hmm. This is in the height of World War I, so please keep that in the back of your head as we discuss this, all right? On July 2nd, 1918, an explosion ripped through the Solvay Process Company. The explosion was so strong that plate glass windows in downtown Syracuse, 6 miles away, broke. Nearby buildings shook. The telephone lines were knocked down. There was only one thing that could have caused such an explosion: the massive amount of TNT being produced by the plant. A piece of machinery malfunctioned, causing a fire that set off the TNT, killing at least 50 people. When they talk about those, the telephone lines being blown down, I picture that explosion that happened in Siberia, Russia. where the trees are just laying flat. And,
in one direction?
Yeah, this percussion came out of this explosion and just knocked everything down. Today, all that remains of the factory are the walls and a structure that goes deep into the hill. The place is overgrown, with bike and hiking trails crisscrossing the ground. The remaining structure is covered in graffiti. Inside there's more graffiti, rooms full of rock debris, and some of the old pipes hang down from the ceiling. People do venture inside, and many do claim it's haunted.
Well, a very strange use for something that should be a wartime memorial and park.
They've never really done anything with it. And
well, you see, that's where the state of New York kind of dropped the ball.
I would like Solvay, maybe the town of Solvay, or even Onondaga County, maybe to go in into.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be the state.
Yeah,
it can be nice. It can be a local park. And,
people already use it.
City
as a
of
wild
Solvay
area.
could own it. Yeah.
People already use it as wild. They go hiking back there all the time. These trails are not maintained trails. These are trails made by people hiking back there and biking back there on their own. So it wouldn't take much to develop the area, really.
No.
Well, I'm sure there's insurance issues in that, but.
Well, about that, that they claim that it's haunted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, orbs are very commonly seen. Some feel a strange sensation that runs through their bodies. Some have even seen full-bodied ghosts there.
Interesting.
A photo by the Ghost Finders Association of Central New York, shared on the website Strange CNY, shows one of these apparitions. People have, it's very active.
What's the description of the apparition?
Well, full-bodied men, usually.
Okay.
There's been EVP picked up here. Now, my opinion, EVP, I don't take that as evidence of ghosts. You've pointed out there's that weird sound thing that happens, like when water goes through pipes or air goes through pipes. Yeah. Your mind will try to make sense of it.
Right, exactly.
And there are pipes hanging down inside this thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that EVP is actually that weird noise that you get. Point is, 50 people died here. At least 50 people died here. It's quite, if it's going to be haunted, this is a place to be haunted.
Like instantaneously.
Killed. Yeah.
And many hangers-on who got injured.
Yeah. So what happened on July 2nd, 1918? Was it an accident? Was it an act of sabotage by Germany? These are questions that had to be answered. Oh, yeah. Imagine. Okay, you're in the height of World War I. And going back and reading these old newspapers was really an eye-opener for me. A lot of anti-German sentiment. Whoa. I mean, we thought the propaganda in World War II was heavy. Yeah. The stuff I saw in World War I, you can definitely see where it's building. Right there. And believe me, one of the first articles I came across about the explosion, the question was this sabotage by German agents? Yeah. Did they get into this processing plant and try to destroy it? That was the first question on everyone's mind, really. Was this an act of
Well, I'm sure
war?
The company that owned the processing plant would certainly be keen to, pin this on the Hun.
Surprisingly, I got to give the company credit here. This is 1918, not really well known for labor relations.
No. But
they had things in place here that even some modern companies don't have in place as it comes to worker safety. And I'm going to give hats off to this company because they knew they were dealing with such a dangerous. What word am I looking for?
There's a lot of substances that come out there.
It was dangerous work. It was a dangerous material they were working with. They didn't treat it lightly. This wasn't the Erie Canal where people were using, gunpowder and TNT with, no training. Yeah. These guys, they did take the safety in consideration. Whether it was safety to protect the workers or whether it was safety to protect the material, I don't know, but the protocols were there.
Right,
so
exactly.
I really think this company probably saved the lives of a lot of people because they had these protocols in place, and I will discuss them in a bit. But.
Yeah, okay, so the company knew what kind of material it was, realistic about the kind of material it was.
Right.
Safety protocols were in place, and accidents happen.
Accidents.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. The factory had been built on the site of an old limestone quarry by the Cement Solvay Company prior to World War I, and it had produced and sold pyric acid to the French, English, and Russian governments. Oh, what is pyric acid, you may ask? Well, pyric acid is a compound used in explosives. It is also used for sterilizing medical equipment. This is the one I've mentioned in a few other podcasts where they find in older hospitals and have to call bomb squads to remove it. They're already selling to the French and the English and the Russians, our allies in World War I. Mm-hmm. Okay. But in 1915, the factory began its production of TNT. And by 1918, it was the best equipped and most efficient munitions factory in the country, supplying a quarter of the TNT used by American troops out of this little processing plant in Solvay. And they did take safety very seriously, like I mentioned. 300 men were specially trained in fighting munition fires. They patrolled the grounds constantly. Fires were common, but these were small and dealt with quickly. So they, like I said, I don't know if it was somewhat, if they were keeping the safety of the workers in mind or the fact that they were worried a fire would destroy their product.
If they had frequent fires down here, then what was starting all these little fires?
You had equipment. Well, you think about 1918 equipment, you probably didn't have static guards. You probably didn't have a lot of things that we have in place now. You've also got, probably open crushers and things of that nature.
Anything that spins on an axle is going to develop through that some kind of static discharge off it, and that could
start a fire. And also, this thing was running 24/7.
Yeah.
So there was never time to really, things would overheat and stuff. So fires were common, and that's one reason they had
smoking.
300 people were just trained to put out these fires.
Yeah.
They weren't even working on the line. They were just there to make sure nothing went wrong, okay? So there were 600 workers who were inside the plant when the alarm sounded at 8:30 p.m. on July 2nd, and it was not a drill. While the workers evacuated, the firemen and patrolmen on site fought back the fire with hoses and extinguishers. But when the roof burned through, about 10 minutes later, the wind fanned the flames. The fire hoses lost all the pressure. And at that time, some of the firemen fled. And then the electricity failed. Oh my God. Can you imagine? You're trying to get everybody out. You're trying to contain this fire. You lose your water pressure. You lose your lighting because the electricity has failed.
That's odd. Why would they lose water pressure just as the...
Yeah, you could see why sabotage got into people's minds at this point, And they're trying to get everybody out. And then seconds later, the area was filled with blinding light and the explosion. Can imagine, the space thing where it gets really quiet and then you see just the light and then
boom. Could have been corporate sabotage.
Oh, God.
What was the corporation?
Solvay. It was a cement Solvay.
Okay. Right. And this was when? July?
July 2nd, 1918.
And the end of the war is coming up.
Yeah, but did anybody know that at that point?
Well, those pulling the purse strings might have.
Well, okay, let's hold off the theories till later. Okay, let's talk about the explosion now. Okay. In the chaos that followed, some of the workers noticed that the flames were starting to spread towards Canada Hill. This is where it could have got very nasty. An area where more than 1.5 million pounds of TNT and an undisclosed amount of pyric acid waited to be shipped.
Wow.
Put this in your heads, folks. An act of God or just luck caused the wind to change, which made the flames move away from the stockpile. If they had not changed, the city of Syracuse may longer be on the map. As for oh my God, can you imagine the crater that would have created? I was trying to find equivalent explosions to 1.5 million pounds of TNT. I could not. I remember the explosion they did in Mythbusters where they blew up that cement truck. That was peanuts compared to this. I think it... And they had to, evacuate an area of a mile around it? And
my goodness sakes, yeah.
And that was like maybe a fraction of what this fire could have set off. So just, it could have ended up so much worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we could be talking about visiting the Solvay crater right now, Yeah,
it's a beautiful lake.
Yeah. Well, look how close it is to Lake Onondaga.
Yeah.
It's not that far. And if that had been a big enough explosion, if
it blasted far enough down through to the water table.
Oh, God, yeah.
It would have flooded it out. You would have had, my, toxic water.
Okay, anybody who's into writing about alternate histories, here's a good one for you. What if the explosion had hit Canada Hill? Yes.
A dress rehearsal for Hiroshima.
Yeah. It didn't take long to contact every doctor, nurse, and undertaker to arrive on the scene. Most had been alerted to the disaster when they heard the explosion. And this is a newspaper article from that time. Mm-hmm. Terrific explosions wreck plant of Solvay company outside Syracuse. Death toll yet unknown, but will be extensive. Salt City rocked by blast. All telephone wires are down. Syracuse, July 2nd. Many persons are reported to have been killed or injured in 2 terrific explosions tonight at the huge plant of Solvay company located at Split Rock, a suburb. Mm-hmm. The force of the explosion rocked the city. Plate glass windows in the business section were broken and residents swayed precipitously. Wow, they liked using big words in the newspapers that day, causing their occupants to rush to the streets. All telephone lines were down, and the exact situation at the big munitions plant was unknown at 10:30 o'clock tonight, but an hour after the disaster occurred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every ambulance in Syracuse is rushed to the scene. Every ambulance in the city has been rushed to the scene, and squads of police hurried to the plant to preserve order. The output of the Solvay company is largely TNT, a powerful explosive used in the manufacture of munitions. More than 3,000 men are employed at the plant, particularly all who reside in the city. Police headquarters reported at 11:30 tonight that an incomplete investigation showed that 16 persons had been killed, scores injured, and probably many fatalities. So this is the first report coming off of. Okay. The fire, which preceded the explosions, has leveled 3 of the entire buildings and is still raging fiercely. The police believe the list of dead and injured will mount to above 100 when details are available. Unequipped with fire apparatus, volunteer firemen were unable to make headway against the spreading flames. Columns of flames shot 300 feet in height. Heat that was so intense it cracked glass windows hundreds of yards away, and a thick, noxious smoke combined to handicap the firemen and rescuers. The first explosion in one of the TNT vats ripped through Building 1 apart, buried guards under the debris, and scattered the flames to adjoining buildings. 2 workmen caught between the 2 burning buildings were hurled through the air by the force of the explosion. Still alive, they were picked up without a shred of clothing on their bodies, and both will probably die. That was reported in the Republic Journal, July 3rd, 1918. And there was a lot of reports, actually, of finding bodies with their clothes completely gone.
Oh, yeah.
Either burned off or ripped off by the explosion.
Maybe they were trying to take the clothes off.
There were some theories that was fire. There were some theories of that as well. Yeah. But the explosion was so strong, you would see remnants of the clothing on some of them. I mean, it would rip the clothing off some of them.
Oh, goodness sakes. Yeah. Well, it would make you blind, make you deaf, and scramble your brains. It's not just the fire from an explosion. It's also just blast, the concussive force of the blast.
Well, you know from running on a cannon crew, just shooting the gunpowder, not shooting any projectile.
There's a definite concussive force that comes out the end of that barrel.
You know, some people are like, well, why can't it stand in front of you? You're not shooting anything. Because that sound wave is enough to cause damage.
Yeah, you could significantly damage your inner ear.
There's not supposed to be any projectiles.
And that's not even using a service charge.
Right.
If you were to use a service charge, it would be like twice the size of just the bang and make a sound, some fire, type charge.
And that's like a 3 and a 6 pound cannon.
A display charge, a demonstration charge is significantly smaller than a service charge.
And they're using plain gunpowder, and they're not using TNT.
Yeah, and that's just triple fine. That's triple F gunpowder there that we're using inside it.
Yeah, there's a reason why they don't have people stand in front of the cannons when they're doing demonstrations. It's not because they're worried about projectiles coming up, because they don't have projectiles in them, or there shouldn't be any projectiles in them. But things could happen. Sticks could get in there, stones could get in there, and he didn't quite get them out with the, what do you call it? That thing that's got looks like a big toothpick. I forget what it's called.
It's got the curlicue on the end there.
Yeah, the thing you use to clean out the barrel. It might miss something.
That's what you use to search. That's the tube searcher.
Yeah, and it might miss something. But and then it comes out with full force. That's really not the reason. The reason is that concussive force of that sound wave can do a lot of damage too. I mean, the
concussive force of the blast went out so far, so that it blew out the windows in Syracuse.
This is
it's incredible.
Okay.
So going on, it took until the next day for the fires to be out completely. The National Guard had to be deployed to keep curious seekers away. People who are rubbernecking. Were just curious about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But they were assisted by the sudden volume of snakes that appeared in the area. They had been frightened out of their homes, and the snakes were, and covered the barren ground, just nothing but snakes. And the 50 men that died were found. Some were nearly impossible to identify.
Yeah.
Firemen that had waited for the water pressure to return were found with their hoses in their hands. And some were found partially undressed due to some trying to remove their burning clothes. The explosion killed many, but some were killed by the poisonous gas that had been released. Almost immediately, people began to wonder if the Germans had sabotaged or bombed the plant. An investigation quickly followed. There were no signs of interference. A malfunction to a grinder machine was pointed out as what probably, most likely caused the initial fire that tore through the building.
Can I stop you there? The snakes thing just gets me. You're trying to clean up this horrendous explosion. You're trying to find the dead bodies, and you're dealing with snakes. Mm-hmm. Granted, New York doesn't have any venomous snakes or poisonous snakes.
Not the possibility of one, but
yeah. There's a couple.
Some that live around the water.
Yeah.
You might get some venomous snakes.
But for the most part, they're pretty benign, but still
water moccasins.
Trying to dig out the dead, or finding any survivors, and you got to deal with thousands of snakes on top of this, plus still putting out the fires. And I'm surprised there hasn't been a movie made of this. Because I don't know, they probably would leave the snakes out because they would believe it.
Well, the explosion didn't stop manufacturing at the site. The manufacturing continued until the end of the war in 1918. Yeah, a couple months later.
Yeah.
Today, a portion of the plant remains. Most people use that site for hiking, mountain biking, urban exploration. The scars still shown at the site from the explosion, although the explosion was horrible. If the wind had not changed, it could have been far worse. Yes, and I want to circle back around to what I was saying about corporate sabotage. All right. If you're in the know and you know the war is coming to an end, and all you've got is a business that creates munitions, and you know the end of the war is coming.
They were still. They still had business.
How were they insured?
Well, they still had business with other countries. It wasn't.
Did they?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Great Britain. They were selling to France. They were selling to Russia.
Well, it's just that sudden loss in water pressure, just as the roof caved in.
Who knows? Maybe it hit one of the pumps. Maybe the explosion hit one of the pumps and knocked it offline. That I never found an explanation for why there was a sudden loss in water
You'd have
pressure.
to go, if you're inclined, do an extensive investigation as to where the firefighters were, where all the pumps were. Weren't they bringing the engines from their fire stations up to
after the explosion? Other fire departments came in. But you see,
while they were fighting it initially,
that was
the on-site fire people.
The on-site fire people were trying to fight it, but like I said, the water pressure failed, and then the electricity failed. So the explosion probably knocked a lot of that off itself.
Presumably.
Yeah, I mean, the fire probably affected some of that, and that's why they lost electricity. That's why, and then the real big explosion happened.
Right.
Thank God it wasn't as big as it could have been. Like I said, I tried to find how much 1.5 million pounds of TNT, what type of damage that would occur. Anybody who has a chemistry background, please leave in a comment somewhere. I am curious.
Yes,
what
absolutely.
What that would be the equivalent of. And like I said, the biggest explosion I've ever seen on TV was the cement mixer explosion.
Oh, yeah.
Mythbusters. And they were still like a mile or 2 miles away from
definitely.
it before they blew it up. And they had to use nitrate. That's all they said was nitrate. It was a mixture of something with nitrate, but they said nitrate was one of the main ingredients that they wouldn't say exactly what it was.
Well, yeah, they couldn't.
Because they had the FBI come in and blow it up. But
bomb squad.
It makes you wonder. Okay, let's put this in perspective. Do you think it was as big as the Oklahoma City bombing? Talk about nitrate explosions.
Yeah.
Do you think this was equivalent, or do you think this was bigger than the Because that knocked out the federal building, but I don't know how much damage it did around the federal building. And I mean, that one killed a lot of people, too.
Oh, some maniac out there, probably.
McVeigh.
Probably, I'm speaking presently.
Oh.
Some maniac out there is inclined to gather up enough fertilizer.
Like McVeigh did.
And touch it off just to see how bad can get.
Yeah. But I mean, that is one explosion I remember, other than, the big one, 9/11.
Yeah.
But the Oklahoma City bombing, and I think this was bigger. I could be wrong. This is where maths failed me. I couldn't comprehend. Oh. I couldn't find, explosion equivalents for dummies, basically. Is that funny? Okay. So I go a little bit. And so if somebody else would like to, hey, this is what it's equivalent.
If somebody's worked out a chart.
I am curious. Because this was affecting people. The shock waves were hitting 6 miles away. That was just the one plant that blew. Mm-hmm. If it had hit Canada Hill, oh my God.
Right. And don't, circling it back to the paranormal, don't catastrophic events such as the sudden catastrophic events break through dimensional barriers? That's
a theory, yeah.
And something like that, a sudden explosion like that.
That killed a lot of people,
yeah, killed a lot of people. That kind of staccato event literally shatters the air.
Right.
This is where ideas of attracting attention to other dimensions, in our existence. Presumably that's what happened with the aliens in the atomic bomb. They didn't pay any attention to us.
Right.
Until we were able to make a big enough explosion and get their attention, and I wouldn't be surprised. This is another, here's another example of a ripe place for hauntings, that ought to be
well, the explosion that
pretty big.
Did happen was 1 to 3 tons of TNT.
1 to 3 tons of TNT.
Yeah. So, that's how much that caused the repercussion 6 miles away. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
1 to 3. Now, they weren't really sure. Nobody had records at the time as to what actually the amount of TNT at the plant was. Were those records lost in the explosion?
I think they were producing at a high rate, but at the same token, they had to kind of keep that on the down low because it was being produced by the U.S. government.
Oh, of course, yeah, and there would be security surrounding the amount of materials being
well,
there.
You see about it being protected. It actually is. I missed this part here. I'm glad I looked this of how much actually went up. It says here on the Wikipedia article. Wikipedia, take your opinions what you want on Wikipedia, but it's a good first source in my opinion. You just got to dig deeper afterwards. But the habitat Split Rock, as well as the remains of the limestone quarry and the munitions factory, are preserved on a 32-acre New York State unique area. And another 100 acres owned by New York State and by Onondaga County. So it is a protected area. It's just not developed. They also have the Wikipedia article also has a postcard
Wikipedia
of what the plant looked like 1910. And I tell you, I look at it, I'm like,
it's a lot different.
Yeah.
It's a lot more together, I'll tell you, folks.
But you can even see the postcard.
Those rails got blown away. All those rails.
Yeah. Well, right here. Well, this. Right here, that's...
And the buildings are non-existent.
I know you can't see it, it's a podcast, but the one building that's still there, it is on the side of the postcard that's on the Wikipedia page about Split Rock. You can see it, the illustration there. But yeah, this thing was a major manufacturing area.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a nice... It's kind of the jalapeno poppers before you go on to your steak.
And like I said, I look at
this... Just an appetizer.
I go to Wikipedia first, and then I dig out other sources, too. I mean, I love New York historic newspapers. That's one of my sites. I got recently on, thank God I work for a university, because I was able to get on a search engine that will go through a lot of first... sources. So that's been able to help with some of it too. But yeah, this is very interesting. This is the largest non-nuclear list of non-nuclear explosions, and I'm looking through right here, and Split Rock makes the list. There was also, not in New York, another in October 1918, there was the Gillespie Company shell loading pad explosion, which happened in New Jersey. That over 100 people were killed there, and it was 12 million pounds of explosion. So wow, went up.
Sayreville, Middlesex County, New Jersey. Yeah. It was in Morgan.
Yeah. The Halifax explosion happened the year before. Those of you who know about that was a pretty horrific explosion in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So it wasn't the only explosions going on, but you imagine you're in the middle of this war.
Interesting. And when did that one occur?
The Halifax, that happened the year before. And it was pyric acid there as well that exploded. It was mainly the TNT that exploded. It could have been the pyric acid as well.
Boom. Oh, Nova Scotia goes up. Boom. Oh, New Jersey goes up.
Yeah.
People in Syracuse are like, oh no.
There was
here it comes.
Another explosion that happened. Well, just to give you there was another explosion happened around this time down in Texas. It was just horrendous. Well, prior to the war, there was the there were two DuPont powder mill explosions prior to the war. One in 1907, one in 1911, one in Indiana, and one in Wisconsin. The one in Indiana killed as many people as the one in Solvay, and surprisingly, the one in Wisconsin only killed one person. But they were only doing black powder there. So again, it's not as
Well, for all you stitch counters out there, black powder is both an explosive and an accelerant.
Right.
So, but these were out and out explosives.
I'm looking for a very modern one to kind of give you an idea.
Yeah, the finer the grain, the faster the black powder burns.
Right.
So the larger the grain, the slower. There's 1F, double F, and triple F powder.
Okay.
I know about.
I found a modern one that will kind of put it into perspective here. The Texas fertilizer plant explosion on 17th of April 2013. A fertilizer company in West Texas, located 18 miles north of Waco. The blast killed 15 people, injured 160, and destroyed 150 buildings. The Geological Survey recorded the explosion as a 2.1 magnitude earthquake, and it was the equivalent of 7.5 to 10 tons of TNT. Now, I got my calculator here, so they said it was, I'm quickly figuring out here, it was 1.5 million tons of TNT that was sitting in that Canadian Hill, which would be the equivalent of 7,500 tons. So if it had hit Canadian Hill, it would have been 10 times larger than that fertilizer plant explosion.
Right.
All right. Yeah. We're getting comparisons here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. There you are.
Surprisingly, they don't have that recent explosion in Russia in here.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not sure what that recent explosion in Russia was.
Well, we've had some very recent explosions.
Yeah,
with Japan and.
Well, I'm thinking about the one that happened about a month ago or so. No, it wasn't even a month ago. It was 2 weeks ago. Thinking about it, they're not even sure what it was. The interesting thing is the monitoring stations that were monitoring for nuclear fallout and all that all went offline prior to the explosion.
That is so. Yeah,
so
man. That's like the water pressure dropping and the electricity going off.
Yeah.
That's just these uncanny things that happen.
Right.
During these events that make you wonder.
Going back to, you're talking about like hauntings and that. Yeah. This place, if it's not haunted, should be. And if you've ever seen any of the urban exploring, it is a very, very creepy place inside the building. Outside the building, it's kind of rough but beautiful. It's not a place I'd go picnic. I'll tell you that.
Oh, no.
I'd be afraid of all the snakes. Oh, no. That's kind of, that snake part bothers me.
The snakes have been frightened away since 1918.
Yeah. It's interesting that this place, there should be a memorial there. There really should be.
The place is a graveyard.
Unlike Oriskany, these bodies were removed, given proper burial. So, but yeah, it's still, like you said.
As far as, the fact that people died there, it makes it a graveyard to me.
True.
Oh.
Well, yeah, it's quite the...
The people who didn't even stand a chance. Yeah. How frightening that must have been. And implications that draws in when you come to the paranormal end of it. Mm-hmm. And the full-bodied manifestations mm-hmm. that are walking around.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's there's a lot of paranormal energy there.
Oh, there's a lot of energy there just in general. I mean, mm-hmm. the place, you know, they were mining so much stuff there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, accidents happened prior to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I will give the company credit for the time period. They were pretty concerned about the safety. Like I said, I don't know if it was safety for the workers or safety because they didn't want to lose the material.
Well, the fact that they had any safety protocols in order, and they had on-site fire control as well.
Yeah.
And I imagine there's alarms at every station. There's fire hydrants
everywhere. They ran
drills
constantly.
Ran drills. Always.
They took it seriously. They did. And like I said, I'm not sure if it was to protect the workers or protect the materials, but it was in place. So again, imagine how much worse this would have been if they had been your typical...
That got out of hand, though. That's interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the water pressure just dying. And the thing is, they're not that far from Onondaga Lake. God, I'll bring up the map again so you can see. Not far at all.
A couple miles.
A couple miles tops.
As the crow flies.
And, I hate to think of what that crater would be like. Well, Fairmount would be gone for sure. Parts of Onondaga Hill, yeah. Mm-hmm. It would definitely change the landscape.
Of course, the death toll would have been a lot larger.
A lot of civilians would have gone.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a lot of civilians did die. What am I saying? It wasn't military, but I'm talking about non-workers there, just people living in the area.
Just standers-by.
And how close it is to where the state fairgrounds are, which at that time were being used as a training center. I mean, if that hit Canada Hill, this whole section would have been gone, including that training area. Oh, you better believe the U.S. government would have thought it was the Germans immediately, you know?
And all the fallout from it, all the debris would have been kicked up into the air and then fallen down. You know,
it was bad enough what happened. I mean,
you'd have pieces of the surrounding community falling from the sky.
Oh,
maybe not. Oh, maybe literally pieces.
Yeah.
You know, but certainly.
I bet you would have
pieces, particulates.
I bet you would have felt it up in Baldwinsville and that area. Definitely.
Well, you could have heard it. You would be
probably
able to
heard
hear
it in Oswego.
I was about to say you could hear it from the lake.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. So we could.
The cannonade of Gettysburg comes to mind.
Oh God! Yeah.
When they shot all those cannons off at once, and people could hear it from Washington.
Yeah.
It's wow.
Well, you know, you take it. Yeah. If the wind is right. Mm-hmm. We can hear things where I work, and I work kind of in a basement area, kind of. It's weird. It's ground floor, but it's the lowest level, and then it becomes the highest level. I work in a weird building, okay? They put 3 buildings together, and it's kind of weird. The other day, we were hearing sirens, and it was nowhere near. But it was the way the wind was carrying it across the lake. We could hear the sirens. So yeah.
And don't argue with us about whether or not the wind affects sound. All right?
The wind definitely played a part in this. If it had not changed direction, wow, just luck, or like they said, act of God, maybe.
Yeah, maybe just got really fortunate. Yeah, really.
Which God?
Which God?
Of course, the character acting that was Thor, saying that was Thor. So. No, it wasn't. Oh, God. Douglas Adams fans are screaming at me right now.
Since it was munitions, it was St. Barbara.
St. Barbara.
She's the patron saint of artillerymen.
Okay. So St. Barbara was looking over them then. Okay.
Somebody was wearing their medallion.
There we go.
By the way, it's one thing I got to get.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a non-believer, I don't care. I like to be part of the group. You know.
Yeah, but you're working around, you know, items that can explode. So yeah, absolutely. I would definitely, any protection you can get.
Absolutely. Gotta get my St. Barbara medallion. I've been saying that for 7 years now, ever since I started over there at Stanwix.
Yeah. But that's it. That was the explosion that rocked through the Solvay processing plant. It is known now as Split Rock Quarry. Again, it's a place you can visit. Go just check on YouTube for all the people who did investigations there.
Yeah.
There was a good one we saw where it was just a couple of people. They didn't even go that far into what was left of the Stone Crusher building. And they were pretty freaked out. And it wasn't because, ooh, there's ghosts, or ooh, there's this. It's just, you start to realize there was an explosion here, and there are tons of debris above us. This is not a good situation. I mean, granted, it's, it's been 100 years, 101 years since this happened. Something shifts just right. Is that all coming down on you?
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, how frightening.
Yeah. But people do go in there, and there's graffiti all over it. You can go hiking back there. Like I said, it's not maintained like some of the, like if you go to Great Bear up here, that's a very well maintained hiking area. It's not maintained, but it is open during daylight hours. There's no place to really park it.
Fun fact, the Order of St. Barbara is a military honor.
Really?
Yeah, it's a society of U.S., of the U.S., for both the U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps artillery, including field artillery and air defense artillery. So there you are. St. Barbara is still active in protecting our artillerymen in both the Army and the Marine Corps.
I mean, I can dig deeper. There have been some good books written about this, some really good articles. There was an article I cited. It was written last year, 2018, about the 100-year anniversary of the explosion. So people are still remembering the explosion. I bet there are families who can tell you, grandpa or grandma would tell me about the day, she rocked out of her bed or their beds because of the explosion. I mean, they weren't kidding about the doctors and the undertakers and the nurses. Nobody had to call them. There was an example where one of the doctors, his whole house shook. He ran out. Okay, that was his immediate thought. Runs out in the street. You could see the explosion from his house. He just basically went in, grabbed his bag, and headed in that direction. And that's how a lot of the emergency personnel were alerted. They ran out of their house, and what the hell is that? Realized where the explosion came from, and booked down there. So, and the undertakers, of course. So, you didn't even have to get on the radio. You didn't have to, you couldn't get on the telephone wires.
If you're working in that capacity, whether or not you're with the coroner, you're with a third party, or you are working in the hospital, how do you mitigate 50 corpses at an explosion site?
This would be an interesting one. I should write to the Order of the Good Death. I should write to Caitlin and here's an example of a horrific accident. How would they have handled the corpses? Yeah. I know she's discussed it in Order of the Good Death before. How do you handle natural and unnatural disasters as an undertaker, as a forensic?
Come to grips with the fact that people you just spoke to a few hours ago are no longer there.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the fact that, even though you've been working around these people for probably, years, in this case of the munitions plant, probably months, and, family members, that sort of thing. Massive amount of death at once. I don't know if she's touched on a lot when it comes to events of war.
I know she, like I said, it's either one of her podcasts she did with the other two morticians, or it was one of her episodes on YouTube where she did discuss, natural disasters. I don't know if she's discussed unnatural disasters, such as explosions like this, like planes crashing, where you have a massive amount of dead to deal with. I know she discussed natural disasters. I'd have to go look for that one, because she did I do highly recommend her. I know people think I'm morbid when I always recommend her on Facebook, but she really does. She's really eye-opening when it comes to what a mortician does, what our views of death are, and in a case like this, you're dealing with a massive amount of death in a second.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I would not be surprised if a lot of them who died didn't even have a last thought. It happened so instantaneous.
Yeah.
They didn't say much how many people had died due to injuries, except for the two that were described as being blown out.
Yes, the two firemen who were blown away.
Yeah.
In Was that a secondary explosion that had occurred? Or?
That was the first explosion.
First one.
Yeah. So.
Okay. They were thrown up against a wall, and then, barely a stitch of clothing on because it all got blown off.
Yep. Or in the case
and then they were not expected to survive.
Or in the case of that one...
after they had been injured.
I think you said some of them were trying to pull off the burning clothing. As they were... This is a month late. This is in August, I think it's August 18th. The TNT plant, not to be rebuilt, the TNT plant at the Split Rock Works of the Solvay Company, destroyed by fire and explosion as of July 24th, when the 15... So, they got the wrong date here, but I think maybe July 24th is when they make this decision. Where 50 lives were lost will not be rebuilt. That decision has been reached by the company, and it is understood that the United States government concedes. Before the fire and explosion, nearly 30,000 pounds of TNT a day were being produced.
Wow.
Okay, so yes. Several of the buildings were destroyed. Oh, July 2nd. Okay. So this is the problem when you read digitized ones. It looks like it says July 24th, but it's actually July 2nd. It's just the way the N and the D were put together. Are to be built at once, but they will be auxiliaries in the Split Rock plant as a whole, and the proposed construction has nothing to do with the TNT production.
What I find interesting, again, is the even number of people who lost their lives. Exactly 50.
Well, some reports go as high as 60.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Still an even number.
Right. But it's still... 50 seems to be the agreed upon amount.
Okay.
By most of the sources I found. But, like I said, some do go a little higher.
That would be an interesting little side investigation for our listeners. If you want to investigate that and find out exactly how many people lost their lives at Split Rock.
But 50 is the generally agreed upon number. It really is. Here's one. Here, okay, over 50 killed by explosion. This
over
is
50 killed.
This is by the Fayette Bulletin. This was July 5th. Over 50 workers missing and 40 injured are now in Syracuse hospitals. So, they didn't even mention how many were injured. This is the first one I saw mention how many were injured. In addition to the 50 known that have been killed, 48 more are missing. Of the 50, 24 are unidentified. Scenes of heart-rendering misery attended the work of identifying the long line of bodies, many of which were charred beyond recognition. A glance at the remains told a frightful story of the desperate fight these men made to escape the blast. Coroner Crane, who spent the greater part of the day at the scene of the explosion, said most of the bodies were found within 100 feet of the plant, and that was the first to go up. So, right at ground zero, basically. When the water was shut off, there you go back to you go back to your conspiracy theory here. The victims were rushed from the burning building, knowing the explosion would soon come. They had not progressed far towards the safety when the plant collapsed and they were buried in the scattering debris.
And that's in quotations.
Yes.
When the water was shut off.
Yes. When the explosion which followed the fire was of the TNT in process of manufacture, or if the apparatus had not been determined according to the statement. So at this point, they didn't realize it was that machine that malfunctioned. The fire, according to Mr. Handy, started in the number 1 TNT plant and appears to have been inside the acid TNT granulating room. The fire burned for a considerable period of time, apparently 15 minutes to a half an hour, in a persistent but not alarming manner, and appeared at times to be under control. My God, how many fires were going on in this place where a 15-minute to a 30-minute fire is not considered scary?
Wow. Why would you allow any fires? Why would you tolerate any fires in a munitions plant?
I found the reason for the water.
Oh, yeah?
The patrolmen and the others in the fire department were fighting the fire with water when the supply of which at a time ceased due to a break in the steam line, causing the lowering of the boiler pressure and the inability to pump.
Oh,
so it was like, that's another.
So the fire had reached part of the infrastructure that was responsible for maintaining water pressure, and it failed.
So this was a report 3 days after the explosion. So the explosion wrecked number 1 TNT building and threw the burning material about the adjoining area. This burning material set fire to the buildings within its area and destroyed by fire, not by the explosion, the office, restaurant, locker room, machine shop, storeroom, laboratory, and others, except the 2 buildings which were now the new carpenter shop and one that was in the process of being constructed.
These facilities, they were like miniature villages. I'm surprised more people didn't get killed.
Oh, yeah, I'm shocked too. The adjoining TNT units, number 2 and number 3, also set on fire and burned during the evening and night, but with only minor explosions.
Oh.
Well, compared to what had just happened.
So there were secondary explosions after the main one. Oh, my goodness sakes.
Yeah, and it talks about people rushing out into the street after the explosion. Automobiles and ambulances raced to the scene of the disaster and carried the injured to the hospitals and the dead to the morgue. Along the roads, hundreds of people were hauling and dragging and carrying their household effects in a mad scramble to get away.
Wow.
Yeah,
probably fearing larger secondary explosions, perhaps. An even larger explosion with all the munitions that were stockpiled along the rail.
Well, here they interviewed somebody here who, at the time of the accident, Clarence Harder, was the only worker from Manlius employed there. Luckily, he was not near enough to the plant to be seriously injured, but he was, however, thrown several feet by the concussion.
Oh.
So there we go again. So yeah, this is just a local report, the Fayetteville Bulletin, July 5th, 1918, and that really, there we go. We found out what happened. Why there was no water pressure.
Yeah.
Because the steam-powered machine went down. And we've hit the 1 hour mark on this.
Incredible.
Yes.
I'm sure with editing it'll be down to more like 90 minutes.
We'll get it down to a more manageable. But
we'll get it down to maybe 45 minutes, maybe something like that.
So I think this is a good place to end. But yeah, this is an interesting. Like I said, I'm surprised a movie hasn't been made about this.
Absolutely. Well, you can understand if you listened, if you're with us through the whole podcast. Yeah, this subject has a lot going for it.
Yeah.
And you can keep digging and digging and digging and finding out,
Oh, like just what I just did here, right here on the computer. Yeah, I mean, I looked at my favorite source, New York Historic Papers, and boom, there's some great reports on it.
Yeah, and then it's first-hand accounts from the time when it happened.
Right. And I love that resource, I really do. Hats off to all the libraries that have been digitizing those newspapers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to any Patreons that we might have.
Yes. I can't think of anyone to thank this week. Like, share, tell us about it, correct us when we're wrong. Please do.
We welcome lively discussion on any of the topics that we cover here on Unearthly Upstate.
And if you think you have something that's not on my lead file, send it my way. I mean, I've got 5 years worth. I'm willing to make it up to 6 years worth. Come on. More things getting this way. All right. So have a good one.
Thank you for listening to our ghastly podcast.
Goodbye.
With explosions.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Unearthly Upstate. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and on our webpage. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. Please like, share, and review on your favorite platform. Unearthly Upstate is an Animator Liar production. The show is produced by Mari and Matt Manette, with purring provided by Honey and Lloyd. Research and writing by Mari Manette. Music is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Unless otherwise stated in the episode, the places mentioned in the broadcast are not paid or contact us for any type of promotion. Please check out our webpage for credit and sources for the episode. Thank you.